Welcome, welcome to Electrify Expo. You are walking by and enjoying this Austin Energy booth, and we're here today providing EV info sessions today all day long and throughout the weekend. And right now I'm very excited about this conversation that we're going to be having today because we are doing something different. We are bringing voices that have been unheard to the table to talk about electric vehicle technology, to talk about emerging technology, access, equity, and affordability. So why are we doing this? Austin Energy, we are working on city goals to get to net zero emissions by 2040. And we know that to do that, we have to address transportation, which is the #1 cause of CO2 in the atmosphere. So how that translates to transportation is that we need to ensure that we have 30% of vehicle miles traveled, 40% of vehicle miles traveled be electric by 2030 in order for us to meet this 2040 net zero emissions goal. So one of the things that we know is that we can't be working with just a certain small segment of the population, a more affluent population who has typically been having the access to these technologies. We really need to bring it to mainstream, and we need to bring it to vulnerable communities and put them in front of the line instead of putting them in the back of the line of these technologies. So today we have a wonderful session. I want to introduce my panelists here. We've got some wonderful community leaders that are representing various different communities here in the Austin area and then at large. And we're going to be talking about how we can provide access to the community and how we can work collaboratively together to do this. So let me introduce the panel. First off, I have right over here, I'll start with Janice Bookout, and she is the director of Earth Day Austin. We have Charisma Tamaz, who is the lead designer of Community Resilience Trust Design Team. We have Laura Morrison here, who is the director of TechCetra Education Fund. And then we have Larry Franklin right here, who's the director of Black Lives Veggies. And then we have Eric Bird, president of Black Professional Alliance. So without further ado, let's get started and hear some wonderful insights from our experts and panelists today. I'd like to start with you, Janice. So Janice has started a conversation, I guess probably about 2 years ago, with a work group where we are working on these topics that I've introduced here today. And so I think what's happened is there's been a wonderful momentum along the lines of providing access and equity and just bringing the conversation to the table and highlighting the needs and the real pain points of what's happening in our communities around EV technologies. So I'd like for you, Janice, to talk a little bit about this group and how it came to be that we're all sitting here together, because I think you've been instrumental in ensuring that we're having this conversation out here today.
Thank you. And I want to start by saying thank you for including me and all of us in this conversation and also our partnership around these activities that we're doing. So I just want to start by saying thank you. So, when you look at, I do a lot of things, I'm involved in a lot of things, but when it comes to electrification of transportation, I have a real commitment that we all emerge in that industry together, right? So often repeated throughout history, as we have a new emerging technology, we leave folks out. And who gets to design the conversation, who gets to design the priorities, who gets to design the infrastructure support, who gets to design the actual model is the quote early adopter, right? But when we think about who is the early adopter is wealthy. And oftentimes the early adopter is also white. So what does that mean? That means that the priorities used to design the infrastructure, the priorities used to design the actual tool are built for one part of the population that's going to be using the tool. And the reality is we're actually past early adopter phase already. So if you study innovation at all, early adopter is who uses it first, who has the time, energy, and money to use the tool first. But if we are just designing for that audience, for that user, then we are not designing for everyone else. And so really this work that we're doing, and it's been since about last summer, this multiracial, multi-organizational work that we're doing is really about how do we bring multiple user perspectives to the table to co-design together both how it's used, how it gets accessed, and the infrastructure to support that access. The last thing I'll say, and then I probably won't say much the rest of the time, is that it's not just a technology, it's also public infrastructure. Transportation is public infrastructure. Transportation is a public tool. So it should be publicly accessible from the very beginning. Or at least that's where my commitment, that's my stand. So that's really what this is all about.
Thank you, Janice. I agree. It's a public access. It's a public asset. And so we need to make that available to everyone in the public. Laura, will you talk a little bit about, how we're going to do this? Because this requires funding.
Absolutely. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Closer up, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, it's really a wonderful moment for us to come together because there is money, as most of you probably know, that's flowing from Washington, from the feds, to actually start building a much more robust charging infrastructure system. And we have, mainly I'm thinking about the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, which is otherwise known as NEVI, and the state of Texas is going to be the recipient of $408 million for charging stations. And TxDOT did a really great job of helping everybody figure out how we're going to use those funds. And a good chunk of those funds are going to be coming to each of the urban areas. For instance, $20 million will be coming to the Austin area. $80 million will be coming to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The other thing paired with that is that money is subject to an executive order called Justice 40. Justice 40 is something that says that 40% of the benefits of this program must accrue and flow to communities that have been underserved and disproportionately impacted by climate change. So this is a great opportunity. We have money flowing into each of the urban areas, and it's a great time to start talking with the community about what does it mean to actually serve and prioritize 40% of those funds, of the benefits of those funds.
Thank you for that description, and it's great because sometimes it gets a little lost, but we know that the funding is what is needed, and it's wonderful to have organizations like TechCetra working to funnel those funds in the right direction. And so now, once we get the money, or as we are preparing to get the money, we really need to think about what is actually needed in the community. We want to make sure we're doing something with a community, not to a community. And so we don't, even though we're experts and we are knowledgeable about technology and what we think is a good fit, we don't know all the answers until we ask people specifically what is it that they need. So I'd like for Charisma, she has a wonderful approach that I think she can shed some light on how to get this done and how to really bring in the voice of the people. So Charisma, can you talk a little bit about that design?
All right. Hi. Wonderful. So thank you very much for having me here. My name is Charisma, and I work for Community Resilience Trust as a lead designer in a particular approach called human-centered design. And I know that, Amy, you talked about bringing those people that we are working and looking to serve into the rooms so that we can begin to identify their needs, their behaviors, and their desires for the future of the infrastructure of EV charging stations in the Austin area. And so human-centered design is it's not a framework, but it's a series of processes that gets people in the room together, workshopping to really identify what they would like to see in the future. And the current workshop that we held, I held them with my panelists a few weekends ago, took many perspectives into consideration. We included the African American community, folks from the Eastern Crescent in Austin, South Austin corridors, Latinx. I myself am Latinx, even though I'm not from Austin, Texas. I grew up in South Texas. I still feel very representative and close to the people that we are trying to solution who are often marginalized and left out, which is the whole purpose and point of human-centered design. We really try to include the perspectives of people who are often last at the table and who have no say. And it's really important that we make it accessible and equitable for all, which is the whole purpose of the Justice 40 initiative. So we're really trying to use those funds in the best possible way and to be at the very forefront of the EV infrastructure game in the nation, which is something that a lot of the participants at the workshop were excited about. Moreover, identifying their needs, one of the biggest needs that they had was making it more affordable and accessible for them. And the people that we included in the rooms were also not just low income, but hard of hearing, the deaf community. So we're looking at accessibility on all levels. And I think it's really important to include these perspectives in the future in a very holistic way. So this is a very iterative workshop that we decided to take part in. And in the future, we're going to have more design sessions, hopefully, so we can see it implemented. And it was very successful.
Thank you so much. So the human-centered design approach is really the way to get essentially to what is needed. And it's so important to incorporate that feedback as it influences programs. And you mentioned affordability, and I'll just say one little thing about that, because I think one of the big takeaways from the session is affordability. Make this affordable. How can we get it? How can we get into this? How do we afford a vehicle? And we'll talk a little bit later about some micromobility that's really talking about this ecosystem of mobility. But I want everyone out here today, you're going to see these QR codes everywhere. Right there, it's sending you to ev.austinenergy.com, which is an EV buyer's guide that really takes out some of the confusion around electric vehicles and access to those. Where are they available? What is the price point? That you can kind of go and play around and filter on the site to figure out what's that price point, what is your budget, utilize that, what is important to you, and what fits your lifestyle. So you can find it on that QR code. It's also in Spanish, and it also highlights used vehicles in lifetime inventory available right here in Austin, Texas. The EV Buyer's Guide, ev.austinenergy.com. So let's shift on to another, unless anybody else has an affordability comment you'd like to add.
Well, I'd like to say thank you. One of the biggest feedback was having more educational outreach opportunities for these communities of color and of high necessity. So I think we're on the right track, at least in education, by just having this event and the ones in the past.
Thank you. Yes, I love this conversation. This is just, we need more of this because there's not awareness around it, So I think it's great, and I thank y'all for being here today and for coming out tomorrow. Laura, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to mention that the EV Buyer's Guide also on the site, you have information about different rebates and incentives that are available. So I'm just wanted to help you out there.
Please do that. Yes, tell us all about it, Laura. I know you've got your brain tuned into that.
I do. The state of Texas has a $2,500 incentive that's available right now. They are limited, though, and they're going fast. So if you're here today and ready to buy an electric vehicle, I suggest you go home. Once you get it, apply for that incentive right away. But also, there are some federal incentives that are available for electric vehicles now. $7,500 is available for new that qualifying electric vehicles. You can look online to see which ones are. But also, interestingly, and this is huge for affordability, there's now an incentive available from the federal level for used EVs that are under the price of $25,000. And 1/4 of the used EVs that are on the market right now nationally are under that price. And I just have to say one other great thing about this, starting January 1st, they are tax credits, but starting January 1st, you no longer have to have that tax liability, and you can just go to the dealer, and the dealer will take that, and you get the money right off the top. So it's really going to be a huge help on affordability.
And I will say from a lived experience, I did get that. When I leased my car, my Tesla, I did get that. They rolled over that incentive, and it's really what made it affordable for me. It was a lot of money. So I think that's great to know they're still continuing that. It sounds every year there's more and more money and more access. So it's going in the right direction.
I just want to kind of ride that out. So one of the issues is access, but also education. As Charisma said, there's definitely the need for more educational opportunities so that the community could be aware of the incentives that are available.
Absolutely, and I think education is one of the topics that we wanted to get into. And we, from the utility standpoint, education is number one. And so we have an EVs for Schools program that I don't know if you've heard about, but it's providing curriculum to our youth. Right now, it's developing future leaders around electric vehicle technology and emerging tech. We're in schools. We started in 4 Title I schools in Austin with the curriculum combined with EV charging for the teachers. 4 Title I schools. It's in 150 schools now across Central Texas, and it's getting distributed now throughout the United States. Education is absolutely number one, and that rings true. Let's get into a little bit more. I know we're kind of going through a lot of content, so thank you for sticking with us. But I wanted, Larry, you started chiming in, so I wanted to come to you on a couple of questions. You know, we're talking about the industry, how to get into the car. We also want to look at what are the investment opportunities? What's interesting to the community? Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share about those opportunities?
I do. Well, first, I want to say great question, and I do. So, as the landscape changes, we've constantly been having conversation about the investment opportunities of charging stations. It's not a huge investment opportunity, but it's an investment opportunity for underserved communities. And so what we're doing right now is just trying to really understand the NEVI funds, organize underserved communities in a way that we can support some type of pipeline work, lining underserved communities up, those that may own businesses, with the NEVI funds. So to me, it's really, really interesting. It's an opportunity that we're getting that we never have got before. And I'm very passionate about it.
Wonderful. I think, too, you know, we wanted to touch on, so it really leads really nicely into Eric. Some of the things that I've heard you speak on before, and I'm so glad you're here to add this to the conversation, is the workforce development piece. Like, for example, we're out here at Electrify Expo. We're in the vicinity of the Tesla plant that's here, right here in Austin. We're looking at an industry that's being completely disrupted. So how do we take advantage and get people into this training, this job training, workforce development?
That's actually a really great question. So it's obvious that we have an emergent technology, and with any emergent technology comes opportunity. And so people will have opportunities to have new jobs and different jobs. One thing I noticed is that the group that we surveyed didn't have very much interest in the workforce. They were much more interested in investment. And at my big age, I'm interested in investment as well. So I think it's an age thing. I think if we bring the youth in, I think we'll see a bigger interest in the workforce. And I say this because yesterday I was inspired on these grounds here that you guys are walking on right now. There's a group called Mind Drive just over across the way right there, just behind the group that's in front of us, just behind y'all. And it's 18-year-olds, so high school students from Missouri, that refurbished a 1969 Chevelle and made it into an EV vehicle. And it's a beautiful car. And they explained it. I got it on my IG. They explained it. They said we took out the motor, we put in this many batteries, we had to fix this issue that we kept coming across. So they became engineers. They became like, the workforce that we're looking for, right? So they adapted to this new emerging technology, and I think that's what we should look for. So the program that you're talking about, the EV in Schools program, is a perfect example of where the workforce is going to come from. I think if we look to people like our age and those of us that are already in the workforce and in our careers, we may be looking in the wrong place, because I don't feel like changing my career. And I can imagine that if I did something for so long one way, I may not want to shift, right? But the youth, they have open minds, they have open eyes, and they're brilliant, and they are willing to jump into those spots. And so I think we should very much focus on the youth.
If I can add to that too, Eric. So Eric and Larry and I carpooled down here, and we talked about this on the way down, actually. And one of the things we were talking about too was that, you know how they'll have like shop programs or like repair programs in schools, and a lot of times those are built on internal combustion engine repair. And it would be really great to see that shift and have not, yeah, and it is happening. And there was a lot of interest in that. There was also some interest. So concern and interest are like two sides of a coin, right? There were some concerns that were brought up in our workshop and in the survey too that have to do with the transition, a just transition from a workforce to another workforce. You know, when you're basically moving to support a different industry, that makes a real difference to have the thought and planning organized around that shift. And anyway, any more comments about that, Eric? And I just wanted to kind of pass it back to you.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think as we look around, because we're all walking these grounds and enjoying the amazing sights and these beautiful cars, like look at the children, and these are our new workforce. Their world will be an EV world, and so they're learning like straight from the source, and I think that's incredible and inspiring.
I love that so much, and I couldn't agree more. I find that when we're doing the outreach with the youth at our EVs for Schools programs, that the kids understand climate impact. They understand it's going to be the greatest challenge of their generation, and they want to be a part of the solution. So they light up and they run with it. I've never seen anything like it. It's very exciting. So that was a great point. Thank you for that. There she goes. There's one of our future leaders right there. Hi.
Hey, future leader.
Larry, can I jump in with a question?
Yeah,
real
please jump in.
So Larry, in particular, I was curious. So, you know, one of the things that we all agreed on, this is kind of for all of us, one of the things we agreed on was that our approach to this research and engagement would be not a promotional approach. So what we're not saying is that people should drive EVs or that we want this to move too fast or any of that stuff. What we're saying is it's coming, it's here and it's coming, and it's going to change everything. And how do we ensure that as it changes everything, we bring everyone along so that the benefits of electric vehicles are amplified for everyone and that the detrimental aspects of a changing technology and all that comes with it, including extraction of resources, all those things that we minimize the harm to communities. And I think that's important. I wanted to hear what you had to say about that, Larry.
Well, I agree with you. Quite often when any type of change comes, it enters communities without their say-so. And what happens is there's a reaction. And the reaction is these white people, you know. Maybe the language is a little different, but it's these white people. And so what we've done is we've organized and we're really trying to look at a way to reshape people's opinion about electric vehicle infrastructure. We're trying to look at a way that really pulls the people in and gives them a say-so, not just in terms of the placement of the EV charging, but also in terms of having the opportunity to create a small pocket of generational wealth, which I believe is very, very important for an overall healthy society.
If I could just add one thing on top of that, the good news is that the NEVI money that I was talking about in the beginning, that requirement that is satisfied Justice 40, when the feds say we want to know if it satisfies Justice 40, their next question is, what are the priorities of the community? That's how we have to measure it against the priorities of the community, not just where the chargers are. And investment and jobs, you know, if that's what we're hearing in our community, then that's where we need to make sure where we're successful.
And we know what the community has said. They have a strong interest in investment. They also have a strong interest in workforce development. So, yeah.
I think another thing that also came from the workshop itself was when we had to map out the priorities of the level 1, level 2, and level 3 charging stations and where would be the most ideal places, is the priority went to schools. A lot of the community members that we have are school teachers. They're there for multiple hours a day. They want to see charging stations, particularly level 2 chargers in high schools and at community colleges as well. Workplaces was the #1 priority as well, to make incentives available for businesses and offices in the Austin and greater Austin area have charging stations for their workers.
Yeah, thank you for that, because those incentives are available. It's commercial rebates that we have at Austin Energy, and we're actually deploying EV charging at schools right now. With our EVs for Schools program, we have the 4 schools that we reached originally, and now our Austin Independent School District has already made 17 more schools EV ready and have now deployed the charging station. So it's growing.
And see, Amy, that's kind of a fear that I have, like we know that institutions are powerful and they are going to continue to get powerful. My concern is that as the landscape changes, for one, the people won't recognize that they have an opportunity. When I say the people, I'm talking about the local mom and pop shop. I'm talking about the place where you go buy your food from that tastes homemade. I'm talking about those locations. My fear is that because of how things have been, they can't really make that connection. Like, I deserve that.
Well, one of the things that was a common fear that was identified in the workshop too. So I think in the future, like the whole point of the workshop is to really do the prioritization and then develop ways so that we can overcome those together as a community.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to get into some really important stuff and really like a couple of things. So you mentioned the white people and having that is the perception. This is all about perception, right? So there is absolutely a sense of gentrification when we go into these neighborhoods and we are putting in infrastructure. So I think, one of the things that we have to look at is breaking those barriers down and letting people know that this is for them. And one of the ways that you do it is actually one person at a time. You're in the community doing the outreach. We have, I want to highlight a little bit about e-mobility right now. One of the things that we've done is working with some of our most vulnerable community members at the Housing Authority of the City of Austin. And so we have worked to help them understand that the bike share, the City of Austin electric bike share that's in their properties are for them, not for someone else. And the way that we do that is we go in and we've done outreach, we've done training videos, and then we've done in-person safety and training videos. We provide free memberships. Then we take an adventure tour and we go over to the HEB that's near them, or we go to the Social Security office, something practical. We go to the park so that we can understand that electric mobility, this connected ecosystem of micromobility helps make for better jobs, better access to better education, and it also provides just a better quality of life. So I think it is all about perception, but it really is people who are in positions of power, that they are in the community and walking hand in hand. And so that's why we're having this conversation today. And I do want to say, Eric, go ahead, and then let's all start thinking about maybe a parting comment before we wrap this session.
Oh, just really quickly, love what you said about going into communities and showing them that, like with e-mobility, showing them that it is for us as well. And I say us because I come from those communities and I always will. That's near and dear to my heart. And so one thing about our communities that I know is that we lean on trusted advisors. And so if you have an elder in the community, or if you have someone who's trusted, who's always there giving back, helping people, if they're involved in that process as well, then more people will come along. And then once people see people, then people will start to follow suit and know that it's for us.
If you don't mind me tagging on what you just said, I think I want to just kind of frame about perception. Yes, it is about perception, and it's also about a history of structural inequities that we have to anticipate and undo, or anticipate and account for, in order to ensure that access is really there for everyone. And that takes, it is perception, and it's also a little more than perception in the sense of like, in the sense of that sort of strategic work we have to do. This is structural and strategic.
And I'll go ahead and add on to that. A lot of this is trust building for the communities of color that have been underrepresented, left out, marginalized, on the fringes. They're very much thinking about other communities in other parts of the world where the batteries of the EVs are being mined and disposed. They're thinking about future impacts. They want to see low pollution rates in their neighborhoods. They're thinking about people all over the world at this point who identify with them as communities of color. And so I think having that at the forefront and reframing the problem and the context, and then solutioning for that by including them in future conversations and continuing these conversations in many ways is important.
Wow, well, this is so thoughtful. This conversation is wonderful, and I want to thank you all for being here. And let me tell you, if you're out here next tomorrow, we'll be doing this again, and maybe we will take a pivot and get even a little bit deeper now that we're just getting warmed up. So let's go down the line and say one kind of parting word. I guess I'll start by saying, you know, the future is here, and I like what you had to say about acknowledging the history, because the future, we can't move forward with the future unless we understand that history. And so I think that's a little bit of how this conversation has been founded. Do you want to start, Janice?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll just say the number one recommendation in our report is building relationships. And I just want to say how grateful I am for the relationships that we've built. And not just we, the 5 of us, but the whole group that we've built that's putting this together and iterating on all this stuff together. It's like, there's a whole joy in that goes beyond what we produce, you know, so I'm just really grateful.
I'll go ahead and say I'm thankful too. Thank you so much, Amy, and everyone here who has been a part of this wonderful step forward in the right direction. And the last thing I wanted to say is I hope we continue to build trust with each other and with these communities so that no one is left out.
And ditto, yes, to all of that. To build on that, I just want to say how excited I am to continue this work, because we've already got plans, we've got work to do, and it's the most beautiful kind of work that can be done, I think, because the best solutions are community-defined solutions, and this is not a situation of like, let's go get community input and then write a report. It is, let's work with the community and provide whatever resources, whoever has what resources and community connections, and define and have them be community defined solutions, because those are the answers.
Very thankful for a highly diverse team entering this new space. You know, like everything that we've done is new. It's like we're just creating as we go. We never really know the answers. As a matter of fact, we didn't even know what our next steps were until me, Eric, and Janice carpooled, and we started having small conversation. And we had a talk with Laura, and it's like, okay, this is the next step. And it's very, very exciting, because often what happens is we don't get these opportunities to even talk about next steps. So thank you, everybody, and looking forward to more great work with you all.
I agree with everything that's said. Additionally, I think we're doing things the right way. I think this is how you institute new technology in a way that's not harmful to communities that are marginalized and possibly fragile, and for people who deserve it, who deserve better. So thank you to Austin Energy. Thank you to Janice, CRT. Thank you to TechCetra, Black Lives Veggies. Everyone, thank you for just investing in communities that really need that type of support and the relationships.
Okay, wonderful. This has been great. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Again, we'll be here tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you all so much.